Hello and welcome to another episode of Game Hammer Extra, where today we're talking about my entire PlayStation Portable library. Let's get into it. Ace Combat X: Skies of Deception is the first PSP episode of the Ace Combat series. Now, I've covered Ace Combat on the PS2 in my tour of that ridiculously oversized library, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. Suffice to say, this is a combat flight sim, and if you're into that kind of game, you're really going to enjoy this because it's great. There is a story, and it's split across several missions, so the game is easy to drop in and out of, which is perfect for a handheld console. For replay value, there are branching paths through the missions, which makes it rather cool to come back to and play again. If you're into your combat flight sims, then this is definitely one to look out for. Armored Core Formula Front isn't actually a game I own, I just have the case. Why does that happen? Because I took a quick look in a charity shop when it was there to make sure that there was something in it, and I was bulk buying a few PSP games at the time, so it didn't register until I got home that yeah, there's a UMD in it, but it's not Armored Core Formula Front. It was actually Hellboy, the film. So, yeah. Now, I first picked up Daxter not because I want to play it, I'll admit that straight away, but because instead it was part of a franchise that I was collecting on PS2, and without it I didn't feel like I had the whole set. But as it turns out, it's a damn good game, and I'm glad I did track it down because, yeah, it's a fun platformer. I've had a lot of fun with this. It's in the top 5 best-selling PSP games, and I can definitely see why. As action platformers go, this is a really nice one, and the fact that the PSP only has one thumbstick, which makes moving the camera rather annoying, didn't actually turn out to be much of an issue with this game. The camera works pretty well. The game's split into missions. Again, this makes it good for some pick-up-and-play gaming, and it's a style that I firmly believe is essential to making something work on a handheld if it's a long-term thing, given that the battery life is always going to be a concern. And there are also 5 ridiculous mini-games to unlock, so there's a lot to do in this game. It's going to keep you going for quite a while, and that is definitely a good thing. Okay, next up is Fat Princess Fistful of Cake. And yes, that is the title of the game. It is the most ridiculous game in my collection, and I kind of like it. I picked up a copy because someone mentioned it on Facebook. It was on a retro gaming group that I happened to frequent, and instantly that title set up shop in my brain because that made it a game I absolutely had to play. So after a while, I tracked down a copy, and yeah, it's pretty good. At its core, this is a MOBA-style game, similar to League of Legends or Defense of the Ancients 2, but instead of attacking a crystal or texting insults to other players in the chat, which is the standard game loop for League of Legends, as anyone who's given that mess of a game any tries at all will know, Fat Princess revolves instead around feeding your team's princess a huge amount of cake so that she becomes too fat for the enemy team to pick up and kidnap. This is actually what happens in the game, I am not making this up. Meanwhile, you've got to try and kidnap the enemy's princess. I'm not joking, this really is what the game is about. You feed princesses and kidnap princesses, and that's it. The PSP version has more levels than the original game, and also includes 4 multiplayer modes, so if you can find anyone else whose purchasing choices come down to whether a game has a stupid title or not, you can still play competitively. It's a ridiculously fun experience, and if you're into MOBAs at all, I would recommend giving this one a try. Football Manager Handheld 2011 is one of those games that came in the bundle alongside Armored Core when I was picking stuff up, and I have to admit I haven't actually played it yet. That's not because I think it's going to be a bad game, it's more because I know that if I do like it, I'll get sucked into it and not play anything else for months, because that's what happened last time I got into a football management game, and the time before that. Formula 1 06 is one of those super realistic racing experience games, and I thoroughly recommend it to anyone who loves that more realistic engine side of racing. It's pretty good, but it isn't Forza Horizon, which is the type of game I like. It's more Gran Turismo, which is the type of game that I have to be right in the right mood for. I enjoyed it when I was in the mood, but it's not a pick-up-and-play game for a more arcade-style enthusiast. Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars is a top-down GTA experience, more like GTA 1 than the modern GTA games. I actually enjoyed playing it, because I enjoy the old-style Grand Theft Auto games, but I didn't get far into it before I had to stop and do some other work. It's definitely on my list of games to go back to and finish, because it's good and it's solid, with a lot of potential to it. Lum Mines is the latest PSP game that I've bought, and I'm very glad I finally tracked down a complete copy in great condition. I am a huge fan of puzzle games. In fact, I am so much of a huge fan of puzzle games that my Switch has turned into a Tetris machine. I kid you not, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 on Switch is so good. I'm a huge fan of puzzle games, and handheld consoles are definitely the right place to play and enjoy a puzzle game, so I'm really glad that I picked this particular one up. I actually had Lum Mines on an old Java-enabled mobile phone back in the day, and I played it so much that I managed to complete all of the levels on that version. Then I played the PS2 version, and I absolutely adored it. So it was finally time to come back to the PSP. It's an amazing game, and if you still have your PSP, you need to have this game. It's that good. Midnight Club LA Remix is a cut-down version of the PS3 game Midnight Club Los Angeles. Instead of using the open world from the PS3 game, though, this one uses the LA map from the PS2's Midnight Club 2, plus the Tokyo map from Midnight Club 3 as a bonus city, so you get a fair amount on the disc. I wouldn't let that put you off if you thought that, I don't really want to play all the old PS2 ones, I want to play the modern stuff, because let's face it, there's still a huge amount of fun you can have in these, and if you're into the Midnight Club series, you know what you're getting. Rockstar do some great stuff when they're reusing their old assets, as the Grand Theft Auto Stories games proved, so there's a lot of fun to be had here. MTX Motor Tracks is a motorbike racing game in the usual MTX style, which you'll either love or hate depending on whether you're into this kind of extreme sports crossed with racing gameplay. Personally, I can take it or leave it because I'm far more of a rallycross fan than anything else, but this is a good game, surprisingly well made, and considering this is a PSP port, and it did get lower review scores at the time of the PS2 original, it's still rather good fun. Space Invaders Evolution is a game I picked up because people told me it was like Space Invaders, but enhanced, with interesting new gameplay styles. Unfortunately, those improvements didn't work for me. They might work for you, but they certainly didn't work for me, because you absolutely need to have the sound turned on in order to enjoy the rhythm action gameplay mode that they've added to this, and I don't turn sound on when I'm playing anything because I'm quite deaf. Therefore, I have to concentrate to get the benefit from sound, which takes you away from the game. It's why I don't like rhythm action games. I'm having trouble these days playing stuff like Tomb of Necrodancer and things like that. If you don't have the sound, which I can't, then you can't play the game fully. Still, the inclusion of the original Space Invaders game on this is nice, and I've played a fair amount of that. But it's hard to recommend buying a game to play the original monochrome Space Invaders when it's available on pretty much every single console and computer ever made, ever. Splinter Cell Essentials is a game that I wanted to like a lot more than I actually did when I played it. I'm a big fan of the original Splinter Cell games, and I played the original Splinter Cell for weeks on end back when I first got it on my original Xbox. The PSP episode, well, it's just not as compelling as the original game, sadly, but there is still enough here to try and to enjoy if you're really into Splinter Cell. So maybe I'll come back and give it another shot another time. Finally, we have Super Monkey Ball Adventure, which is another of those games that I bought in a bundle at a charity shop, and my goodness, I am glad I did. It's hilarious, and I absolutely love it, even though I'm notoriously bad at this kind of game. Apparently I can't keep a marble going in a straight line in a marble maze game to save my life, but that's never stopped me loving these games because it's Super Monkey Ball and it's just that good fun. It is so much fun, in fact, that I absolutely recommend it, even if you aren't a fan of most games, because it's that kind of pick up and play action. You don't really need to have it explained to you, you kind of already get what's going on. As a bonus, it's full of pick up and play, short mission-based gameplay that makes it perfect for a handheld console. This is definitely one to add to your collection. So that's the games. But what about the films? Well, all UMD films have the same issue. The resolution is notoriously lower than you'd probably like, and the sound is compressed as well. Nevertheless, in this era of enjoying films and shows on a phone, The majority of us will be so used to these limits by now that watching a film on your PSP isn't actually that bad of an experience. That's why I'm usually happy to pick up a film or TV show on the PSP if I see one out and about at the right price. So, what have I got? Hellboy is a film that I didn't know I'd bought because it was in the case for Armored Core Formula Front. Still, it is a decent film and I did enjoy it when I saw it at the cinema, so it's a welcome part of my collection. Good fun, definitely one I can watch again and again. Next Friday is the sequel to Friday, the film that gave us the Bye Felicia meme. It's not really my kind of film. I'm not a stoner comedy fan, although I will admit to finding Cheech and Chong rather amusing when I first saw it on a late night broadcast from Channel 4 way back when I was probably too young to have actually been watching it. Maybe if I'd seen this one when I was younger, like I did with that, it would have gone across better. Quantum of Solace is the notoriously boring entry in the Daniel Craig era of James Bond films. I've seen every single one of the James Bond oeuvre, thanks to my dad being the biggest James Bond fan ever, and as a result I can say for certain that it is definitely nowhere near the worst Bond film. Hell, there isn't even a single invisible car in this one for a start, and no one flies any doves across the screen to try and shock the actors. Oh my goodness, why did they do that in so many films? Anyway, let's get back to the point. There are some excellent action sequences in Quantum of Solace, and the plot is rather believable, but it's just a little bit too dull. Tron Evolution is a bad film. I'm sorry to say it, but it is. The original Tron was groundbreaking, but this sequel does nothing to build on what its forefather achieved. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. Underworld Evolution is one of those films that I would probably call a guilty pleasure if I was the kind of person that could feel guilt over enjoying a film. It's a wonderfully ridiculous film, and it feels like someone was locked in a room with a box full of World of Darkness role-playing books and a note saying they weren't allowed out until they'd read them all. The whole franchise is about very pale people in black leather having highly stylized fights. It's hilariously dumb and worth a watch if you need something that you don't want to think too much about. Finally, we have Vacancy, a modern B-movie style slasher film, which is exactly the kind of film that I like to enjoy on a late night. I'm a big horror fan, but I absolutely despise the lowest common denominator style of genre, as exemplified by the likes of Saw. Because that's not horror, that's just crap for idiots. Vacancy, on the other hand, looks like it's going to be going down the Saw route, and then doesn't. It's not a great film, but it's enjoyable for an occasional watch. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a smaller library than some of the other ones, like the massive PlayStation one that's behind me. But I love it nevertheless. It's a lot of fun and it's got some varied titles in there. Really good. What was your favourite? For me, it's hard to decide on a favourite. I think it's a bit of a toss-up between Lum Mines and the Super Monkey Ball because they're really good fun. Would you agree with that assessment, or is there something that I should have in my collection that I haven't got yet? Do let me know in the comments section down below. Let's have a talk about our favourite retro games. But until next time, I've been Zoe Kirk Robinson. You've been watching Game Hammer Extra. I'll see you later. Take care and happy retro. If you like the show, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help create future videos. That's patreon.com/Zoe Kirk Robinson. And I've got an extra special thanks going out to Chief89, Sam Yates, Retro Mickey 82, Mo Henry, and George Botterini. Thank you so much, guys.